The date May 29, 2025 now carries a heavy burden in Gaza. On this day, Israeli military operations resulted in the tragic loss of at least 63 Palestinian lives. Reports from sources like Radio Pakistan confirmed this grim tally. Al Jazeera further detailed the horror, indicating that 64 people had been killed, with a devastating 55 of these deaths occurring in the early hours of May 29 alone. These figures are not mere statistics. They represent individuals, families torn apart, and futures extinguished. The intensity of the violence on this single day underscores the perilous reality faced by Palestinians in Gaza. Each life lost adds to an already unbearable toll. The international community must acknowledge the severity of these events. The attacks were widespread and devastating. Among the areas hit was the Bureij refugee camp located in central Gaza. Israeli strikes on this densely populated camp claimed the lives of 23 people. Refugee camps, already symbols of displacement and vulnerability, once again became sites of profound loss and suffering. These strikes are part of a larger pattern of military actions that disproportionately affect civilian populations. The targeting of such areas raises serious questions about adherence to international humanitarian law. The civilian infrastructure, already fragile, sustains further damage, compounding the misery of those who call these camps home. The world watches, or should be watching, these events with grave concern. The sheer scale of casualties in such a short period points to the intensity of the Israeli offensive. For dozens of families, May 29 brought irreversible sorrow. The consistent reports from various news outlets paint a coherent picture of a day marked by intense bombardment and significant loss of Palestinian life. This is not an isolated incident, but rather an acute manifestation of an ongoing crisis. The repetition of such days of high casualties creates a climate of constant fear and trauma for the people of Gaza. They live under the shadow of potential attack, never knowing if they or their loved ones will be next. This constant insecurity is a profound psychological burden. The immediate aftermath of such strikes involves frantic rescue efforts. Families search for survivors amidst the rubble, often with minimal equipment. Healthcare facilities, already overwhelmed, struggle to cope with the influx of wounded. The loss of 63 or 64 lives in a single day is a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. It highlights the urgent need for a cessation of hostilities and a meaningful process to address the root causes of the violence. Without such measures, days like May 29 will continue to punctuate the tragic history of Gaza. The cycle of violence needs to be broken for the sake of humanity. The events of May 29, 2025, while horrific, are tragically part of a much larger and deepening humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. The scale of suffering endured by the Palestinian population is staggering. According to UNRWA figures, between October 7, 2023 and May 21, 2025, at least 53,655 Palestinians were killed. An additional 121,950 were injured during this period. These numbers represent an almost incomprehensible level of human loss and suffering. The conflict has not spared any segment of society, with civilians, including a significant number of women and children, bearing the brunt of the violence. The consistent accumulation of casualties demonstrates a persistent crisis. Displacement has become a defining feature of life, or rather survival, in Gaza. A ceasefire that collapsed on the night between March 17 and 18, 2025, led to a significant escalation in Israeli military activities. This escalation resulted in the displacement of over 599,000 people in a single week between May 15 and May 21, 2025. An additional 161,000 individuals were forced to flee their homes. People are constantly seeking safety that remains elusive. This mass movement of people strains already scarce resources and creates conditions of extreme hardship. Families are uprooted multiple times, losing homes, belongings, and any sense of stability. This constant upheaval is profoundly destabilizing. The healthcare system in Gaza is on the verge of total collapse, if not already there. Hospitals have been repeatedly targeted since October 2023. Al-Auda Hospital in northern Gaza, one of the few partially functioning medical facilities, is overwhelmed and critically low on supplies. Efforts are ongoing to evacuate patients and staff, a grim testament to the dangers faced by medical personnel and those they try to save. As of late May 2025, UNRWA reported that 41% of essential medical supplies were completely out of stock. Another 27% were projected to run out in under 2 months. This severe shortage directly impacts the ability to treat the injured and sick. The youngest are often the most vulnerable. On May 16, 2025, alone, at least 45 children were killed in Gaza. In the 2 months leading up to May 22, 2025, over 950 children lost their lives. Basic necessities like food, fuel, and medical aid are dwindling. Malnutrition is a growing concern, with 2,917 out of nearly 50,000 children screened in early May 2025 diagnosed with acute malnutrition. Food diversity has plummeted, and the price of essential items like flour has increased by an astounding 3,000% compared to pre-conflict levels. This dire situation creates a generation scarred by war and deprivation, with long-term consequences for their physical and mental well-being. The delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza has become fraught with peril and obstruction, turning essential relief into another front of the conflict. For an agonizing period of over 11 weeks, from March 2 to May 18, 2025, no humanitarian aid entered Gaza due to an Israeli siege. This blockade had devastating consequences, exacerbating the already critical shortages of food, medicine, and other essential supplies. When limited aid was finally allowed to resume on May 18, 2025, the accumulated needs were immense. The population, already pushed to the brink, faced an even more desperate struggle for survival during those weeks of complete closure. This deliberate withholding of aid is a serious concern. Incidents during aid distribution highlight the dangers faced by civilians seeking assistance. On or before May 29, 2025, Israeli forces reportedly opened fire on Palestinians attempting to receive aid, resulting in at least 3 deaths and dozens of injuries. Similarly, on May 27, 2025, at a new U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid distribution site in Rafah, chaos ensued. At least 1 Palestinian was killed and 47 others were wounded, while the Israeli military denied opening fire directly at crowds, admitting only to warning shots. The outcome was lethal. Such events underscore the life-threatening conditions under which aid is distributed, if it is distributed at all. International bodies and aid organizations have voiced strong criticism regarding the management and obstruction of aid. The United Nations condemned the US-backed GHF aid system, labeling it a distraction from atrocities and a waste of resources. UNRWA Chief Philippe Lazzarini asserted that existing well-established systems for aid delivery were adequate and being undermined. Shayna Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council pointed out that the chaotic and dangerous conditions at aid distribution points often advance Israel's political and military objectives rather than genuinely alleviating suffering. These criticisms highlight a fundamental problem with the current approach to humanitarian assistance in Gaza. The obstruction of aid is not an abstract problem, it has concrete daily impacts. Between May 1st and May 20th, 2025, out of 167 planned UNRWA aid movements within Gaza, a staggering 105 were denied access by Israeli authorities. 15 more were impeded, and 8 had to be withdrawn due to safety concerns or other obstacles. Only 39 were facilitated. This systematic denial and impediment of aid convoys directly contribute to the suffering of the civilian population. Palestinians at a newly opened aid distribution point in the Netzarim corridor found themselves trapped, unable to leave due to Israeli tanks and ongoing shooting after walking over 5 kilometers to reach the site. This is the grim reality of seeking aid in Gaza. The current crisis in Gaza does not exist in a vacuum. It is deeply rooted in a long history of conflict, occupation, and dispossession. The recent escalations, including the devastating attacks of May 29th, are painful reminders of unresolved core issues. The broader context includes the ongoing Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories, the blockade of Gaza, which has crippled its economy and society for years, and the expansion of settlements in the West Bank. These historical factors contribute to the cycle of violence and the immense suffering of the Palestinian people. Understanding this history is crucial to comprehending the present despair. The violence and oppression are not confined to the Gaza Strip. In the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the situation remains volatile. Between October 7, 2023, and May 17, 2025, 938 Palestinians, including 198 children, were killed. Since January 2025 alone, 132 Palestinians, with 25 children among them, lost their lives in the West Bank. Amnesty International has reported that Israeli-supported settler violence is systematically displacing dozens of Palestinian herding communities, labeling these actions as war crimes. Incidents of settler violence, harassment, and arson attacks continued to be reported between May 15 and May 22, 2025, creating an atmosphere of fear and insecurity. Amidst this crisis, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has reiterated plans to move Gaza's civilian population to a sterile zone at the southern end of the territory, while military operations continue elsewhere. Such plans raise profound concerns about forced displacement and the further fragmentation of Palestinian land and society. The infrastructure of Gaza lies in ruins, with nearly 175,000 structures damaged, generating an estimated 53.5 million tons of debris. Clearing this rubble is projected to take 22 years and cost over $1 billion. UNRWA itself has seen 172 of its installations impacted, falling within militarized zones or under displacement orders. International reactions have been mixed, though condemnation of the violence and calls for a ceasefire are growing. Demonstrators recently held a silent vigil near Harvard University's commencement, demanding an end to U.S. support for Israel's war on Gaza, which activists like Carol Rain termed a genocide. While there are reports of Israel backing a ceasefire proposal sent to Hamas and Hamas studying it, the path to a lasting peace remains fraught with obstacles. The urgent need is for an immediate cessation of hostilities, unimpeded humanitarian access, and a renewed international commitment to a just and lasting political solution that addresses the rights and aspirations of the Palestinian people.